What is up? This is the Chig coming at you with another Diablo 4 video. Today, we are just kind of standing around in Zarbinzet because we are going to talk about the 5 top leveling builds, one for each class, before I go into it and dive into it and kind of make a video on how to do each class, what order to get your aspects in, kind of why you should do this way, and the other. But before we hop into it, hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button. Don't forget, we're having a giveaway. As soon as we hit 1,000 subscribers, I'll be giving away a copy of Diablo 4 or a video game of your choice. Also, don't forget, on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays, we're over live on Twitch TV from 7 to 9 at twitch.tv/thechig. Come hang out. We have a good time over there. Anyway, let's hop right into it. I'm just going to show you these on max roll so we can kind of talk about them and I can show you some of the things I'm talking about here. Start out with the Rogue. Twisting Blades. Bar none. Best leveling build for the Rogue. There is nothing better than this as far as leveling goes. It's fast, it's mobile, it's efficient. It just does everything it needs to do. One of the awesome things about this, it's a little squishy, but the mobility makes up for it. If you pay attention to your character and what you're standing in and what you're near, you can most of the time get out of trouble. As you can see here, Woody Joe, when he made this guide, he only put 3 aspects on it for leveling. And that's because that's really all you need. On the necklace, Twisting Blades. Twisting Blades orbit you for a short time after they return to you, dealing damage per hit based on the distance the blades returned, up to % damage, rogue only. Okay, so my 2 pennies on this. Put this on a 2-hander that you're not going to replace, because you really don't have to replace your 2-hander when you're using the melee weapons unless you get a huge upgrade. But that is a very easy to get aspect. You get it in Skosglen. You can see there it says unlocked by completing Jalal's Vigil in Skosglen. Super easy dungeon, super easy to get to. I'll get you the TLDR of when you can do these things and stuff in the rogue specific video, as well as how the build plays and stuff. Also has vulnerable enemies grant 70%. It's going to be 50 if you get the aspect. Energy regeneration for 4 seconds after killing an enemy. You unlock that in the dry steppes by doing the shifting city. Also super easy dungeon. But the point being, you're getting these things that are going to help your DPS a lot. And then this is Edge Master's aspect. You can get this one super easy. Hold stones in Skosglen. Increase your damage by 10% based on your available primary resource when cast. We're going to have a lot of, as long as you're starting the fight, your first couple of casts are always going to have a lot of resource. As you can see here, Poison Trap, Dark Shroud. Poison Trap for the CC and the debuff. Dark Shroud for the movement speed and the defenses. Dash just to get around the map. It also makes it where once you upgrade it, they take increased critical strike damage for you. Shadow Step. This is our only version and way to get unstoppable. So you really only use this when you're crowd controlled. Puncture. This is our vulnerable thing. This is what gives us vulnerable on our enemies. Gonna cast this a couple of times when you're at low resource. And then Twisting Blades. It's going to reset our cooldowns. It's going to deal extra damage. It's going to come back to us. It's going to be nasty. It's amazing. We also use Inner Sight. So once you're attacking your Inner Sight target, once the bar fills up, you have infinite resource for 4 seconds. Infinite resource for 4 seconds will let you get off a lot of Twisting Blades. And then use momentum once you hit level 35, or you have enough talent points to make it, which you can do at level 25. What this is going to do is give us damage reduction, energy regeneration, and movement speed. It's going to make us tankier, make us do more DPS, and make us move faster. It's amazing. So the pros of this build: fast, super fast. You're going to be in and out. You're going to be dealing a ton of damage. You're going to pop in, wop, 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 pop out, run away. You're going to kill stuff behind you. It's amazing. You get to dash around like mad. The mobility is unmatched. Super amazing. Super fun. Super satisfying when you start to play it well. Some of the cons, and he's got my biggest ones here listed. Difficult to play. A lot of these builds have a skill floor that is really low. This build does not. This build's skill floor is substantially higher than the rest of the build's skill floor in the game. You have to be able to get in, get out, do your damage, reposition, do your damage, reposition, and that's what the whole gameplay is about. Once you learn how to do it, though, it is very, very, very satisfying. I also touched on these other stats. High effort playstyle. You have to be go, go, go all the time, and you always have to be moving. The defenses, like I said in the beginning, they're not the best, but as long as you're paying attention to where your character is, you will be able to move around, get everything done. You'll be able to get out of harm's way, and that's very important. Excuse me, getting a little dry. All right, so next up, Firewall Sorceress, or Sorcerer if you pick the male. So again, this is by another content creator named Northwar. He does a really good job in this. I'm going to link all of these in the description, so you'll be able to get right to them. He also only has 3 aspects. He's got the disobedience aspect, which comes from Kyrgyzstan, which is a little further, so you got to be a little higher level to get this one. But since you're constantly burning enemies, this is going to stay stacked all the time. It's going to give you increased armor all the time. We've got dealing more damage to immobilized, stunned, or frozen enemies. You slow a lot with this build. You stun and freeze with Ice Nova, so you are really, really CCing a lot. So having this, definitely top notch. And then using a cooldown restores mana. You get this in Hawazar. You can get this one kind of early as well. So anytime you use a skill, you get 15 mana back. Whenever you use a cooldown. The only thing we have that isn't a cooldown is Firewall. So you're going to be doing that all the time. You're always going to be getting back mana. You're basically keeping everything on cooldown at all times, except maybe teleport because it gets you out of trouble. So let's go over the skills real quick. You've got Firewall. We're using Mage's Firewall with this. I'll go over all of this in an individual video. But it burns them, and then it continues to burn them for 3 seconds after they leave it. So you throw this on the ground, you kite them through it, they take damage, they take more damage based on moving around through it. Inferno's the big snake cooldown, pulls them into the middle, burns them over 8 seconds. It's an amazing cooldown, and it has amazing visuals. Frost Nova, stun them in place, freeze them in place. You get to reduce the cooldown on this with all the talent points. Teleport, get out of the way, mobility, that's really all that's for. Ice Armor is going to give you a barrier. It's also going to give you a mana regeneration because you're going to get at least the second level of it. And then Flame Shield is going to give you an immune for a couple of seconds. It's going to heal you a little bit, and it's going to burn enemies around you, which is kind of cool. We're also going to put Fireball Enchantment on. That way whenever something dies, it explodes for damage. As well as the Firewall Enchantment. Whenever something is burning, it has a chance to spawn firewalls under it. So if it's burning and it spawns firewalls, it can burn and spawn firewalls and burn and spawn. So like it can keep going forever. Sometimes you'll burst something down and not even try to. So let's talk a little bit about some of the pros and cons. So Northward marked Giant Snake. That is absolutely correct. You get to play with a Giant Snake. Really good AoE. You get a lot of walk and drop and walk and drop and walk and drop. Things die behind you, but you get to kite things around and AoE down the screens. Like, it's amazing. Decent single target damage because you get to stack everything up in one spot. Stack it all up. You can drop things underneath it. As long as it's standing still, you can melt it. It's super easy. Fire and forget style farming. What he's saying by that is while you're running around, you can just drop these behind you, and things that are following you are literally going to burn themselves to death. It's really, really good. And it has the same problems as just about every other sorceress build in the game. Low on utility. All you bring to the table is damage and a little bit of CC. You don't have anything that affects the party. So if you don't out brute force whatever it is that you're doing, you don't have any utility. No front loaded damage. It's all about the burns with this build. You're laying things on the ground. The only time you get any damage is when things start popping once they start dying. And the problem with that is it's not front loaded. It's at the end of the fight. So things start dying. It's all over the place. Weak versus mobile enemies, you're laying a thing on the ground. So you literally have to lay the thing on the ground and then kite it around it and make it step in it. Otherwise, you're not going to be dealing any damage. Needs codec of power aspects. One of the biggest things here is you need the cooldowns restore mana aspect. That's the biggest thing. Super easy to get, but it's required. We will go over that in the deep dive we're going to do in the next couple of days. I'm going to do a deep dive on all 5 classes. So if your class isn't first or second, give it a day or two. I'm going to have them all done by Thursday, and I am aware that there's going to be at least one day that more than one has to come out. So don't worry about that. They will all be out before the season starts. Guarantee it. This one is also really good. Dealing more damage to immobilized, stunned, or frozen enemies, you immobilize and freeze a lot with this build. It works out. It makes it a lot easier. You do a lot more damage. Frost Nova, throw a couple things under them. They're going to burn. They're going to take more damage. I'm not entirely sure if it does snapshot the damage with the burn or not, but even if it doesn't, it's still very strong. And then Disobedience, super easy to get. Like I said, you get it a little later because it's in Kyrgyzstan, but it's not a hard dungeon. So you get that, you get a little more tanky, and you're rolling out. So let's go ahead and move on to the Necromancer. So the author of this guide has a couple more aspects kind of given here. I'll go through and kind of show you the ones that really, really matter versus the ones that you can do without. For the most part, you just need a couple. You don't need them all. Obviously, having them all would be beneficial, but you do not need them all. And I don't know what my green screen's doing over there. Who knows? I'll wave my hand and it goes away. Oh well. Anyway, the Necromancer here. We are sacrificing everything, which is kind of cool. So standalone stuff. You're coming around. It's just you. No minions. No minion. Anything to worry about. So with the Bone Spear, this is the ability that goes out and comes back. When it goes out and comes back, it does a lot of damage, right? When it goes out, when it turns around and comes back, it just, right? Anyway, it does a ton of DPS. Like, there are a lot of videos of this build just deleting everything because of how much DPS it does. You want to aim it such that it pierces, breaks, and comes back, and all 4 projectiles hit the mob. It deletes them. It's amazing. Like I said, there's gonna be some gameplay. I'm gonna show you how this build works as well. I personally prefer playing with minions just because they're fun, but this is the most effective build to level with as of right now. Obviously, some of this is subject to change depending on what happens on the patch day. However, for the most part, I do feel pretty confident that most of these specs and builds are going to remain the same, and we're going to be able to level the same way as we were. The good part about this is we get all of the powers that we've already unlocked through the Altars of Lilith, so we all get to start out on tier 2, and it's going to be amazing. Anyway, so you've got a generator and bone splinters. You're just going to be throwing this to generate. You're going to be using Bone Spear literally as much as you can. Corpse Explosion, it just does a ton of damage, and getting the blight damage on the ground, the dot, is amazing. Corpse Tendrils, so this is kind of the set them up and knock them down. So you set them up, pull them in with Corpse Tendrils, and then you bonk them with Bone Spear. It goes through, pierces, comes back. You can one-shot an entire pack that way. Bone Storm, you're going to be getting some extra crit strike chance. You're going to be getting some extra defenses, and it's going to be hitting by itself. So you're going to be doing a lot with that too. Obviously, it's got a little bit of a long cooldown, but it's going to be helping you out a lot when it's up. So pop this every time you run into an elite or a big pack, and you're just going to mow them down. And then Blood Mist, this is going to be your defensive thing. You're going to be immune for 3 seconds. You get slowed, you deal damage, and you heal, right? So you just become a puddle. Basically, if you've ever played League of Legends, you become Vladimir's puddle for a couple of seconds. So we are sacrificing the Iron Golem, which is going to give us 30% increased critical strike damage, which is very, very strong as soon as you can crit, right? We're going to be getting the Cold Mages and sacrificing them. You deal 15% increased damage to vulnerable enemies. So we've got a couple of ways in the build to make vulnerable. I'll go over that when we go over the actual build itself here in a little while. And then Skirmishers, sacrifice your crit chances increased by 5%, but you no longer raise Skeletal Warriors. So you just get 5% flat crit chance, which is amazing because you start with 5. So you automatically have 10%, which means you're automatically going to be able to crit. You're automatically going to be able to do nasty, nasty things. All right, let's see what kind of pros and cons the content creator has for this. Good AoE. That's absolutely true. You pull them in, you blow them up. That's literally the play style. Fast resource gain, also true, because as you blow up corpses and as you use your bone splinters, you are going to be generating essence like crazy. It's going to be really fast. You're going to be up to full really quickly, and you're going to be able to dump it again. Instant vulnerability. Yeah, so whatever the build is, there's a couple of different ways to get vulnerability in the build. We'll talk about that when it comes around. One of the big ones is going to be corpse tendrils. When it pulls them in, it makes them vulnerable for 3 seconds. So you pull them in and then you cast a couple of corpses. There you go. Corpse bone spears. There you go. That's what I was trying to say. So yeah, you pull it in, you do some bone spears, and you corpse explosion and womp, right? Best single target damage, and currently it is the best. So, and it has to do with positioning and hitting with all 4 things, but it is the best. It is amazing. It is super strong. All right, so the cons. Corpse reliant. If you don't have corpses, you can't corpse explode. If you can't corpse explode, you can't do the dot on the ground. You can't use tendrils. You can't do a lot of things if you don't have corpses. So you need corpses. No mobility skills. The only mobility skill you have as a Necromancer slows you down, and it's Blood Mist. So that is something to take into consideration. It says needs to sacrifice summons. That's not necessarily a con because you get the buffs from it. So it's like, but I can see why that would be a problem. So we'll put that in the cons category. No health regen, fortify, or barrier. So a lot of the other builds do have health regen and barrier. So that's kind of something to take into consideration. But you're so strong, it really doesn't matter. Like, you really don't care for the most part. You're going to be literally dunking on basically everything you're fighting with this. And it is real strong, I promise you. All right, let's move on to the next, the Tornado Druid. So I have mixed feelings about the Tornado Druid. The Tornado Druid is the best. However, ease of play, I do believe wholeheartedly that Lightning Storm is better than is Tornado. That being said, literally the only thing you would have to change in this entire build is the points from Tornado to Lightning Storm. Everything else can remain the same. The aspects will be a little different. So if you've got any questions about that, please feel free to reach out to me in the comments, and I will help you out with that. So as you can see here, we've got a couple of aspects. So defensive, Earthen Bulwark increased by 6 seconds. That one is just amazing in general, so you definitely want to get that one early. Core Steels deal extra damage for each active companion that you have. We have 3 because we have... no, we don't. We only have 2 in this build. Okay, so you have 2, so you just get 16% extra damage, 12% extra damage, just for free. And with the necklace, skills deal extra damage based on your available primary resource. You can use that on all of your builds. This one's huge, Ring of the Umbral. It only starts out at 1 though. So go to Champion's Demise, get this. Restores your resource when you crowd control an enemy. So we're going to be using a couple of different things to crowd control. So Tornado slows enemies. So every time your Tornado hits something, it's going to slow the enemy. When it slows the enemy, it's going to give you back resource. It's not going to be a lot at first, but as it's going, you will be able to tell the difference. Basic skills gain extra attack speed. This is just to get your spirit back faster. Also to stack up your vulnerable faster, because your main skill over here, Storm Strike, is going to have a 50% chance to make enemies vulnerable for 3 seconds. And then you've got Tornado. Tornado is going to have a chance to spawn an extra Tornado, and it's going to slow enemies. You've got Earthen Bulwark, just a big defensive shield, which is amazing. It's meaty. We're going to get Wolves. They're going to have a chance to fortify you, which is just free fortify. Trample is basically to get out of dodge. It's to get out of abilities. It's to get out of CC. It's to reposition. And then Hurricane is going to also have a chance to make enemies vulnerable. as well as slow them. So it's going to CC them for your Umbral Ring, which is also amazing. You don't need all of these. I would say the core skills, the Umbral Ring, and the other two maybe. The defensive ones are just quality of life. Obviously, if you're upgrading your gear frequently, you'll have enough HP and enough armor that it won't be as big of a deal. Your spirit boons, you do this quest at level 15. Obviously, all of the classes have their level 15 quests, so you're always going to want to do this. We'll talk about that in another video. But Scythe Talons, all of that, we will definitely talk about that when we go over the build and how you're supposed to play it. Let's look at the pros and the cons that Mr. Teo has put down here. Ranged combat, definitely. Most of the time you're going to be playing in melee though, so that's kind of deceptive because you can't control where the tornadoes go, so you're going to walk up and cast them. Extremely tanky, that is very true. You can literally face tank the world. Consistent damage, as long as your tornadoes are hitting things, it is doing a ton of damage. That is also very that tracks. Easy to understand, that's true. You build, you spend, you use defensives. Super easy, it's not that hard. The cons, low mobility. You are frumpy and slow. That is very accurate. Mediocre single target, that is also true. You will stand there and spam tornadoes because it's only going to hit them one tick and then it's going to go past them and go behind them. There's really nothing we can do about that without some aspects that you get way later, and they're not worth wasting when you're leveling. Main skills are hard to aim, absolutely, because they do not go where you're aiming. They go wherever they want because they're tornadoes, random pathing. Intensive spirit management, that is also very true. You're going to be building and spending a lot. It is really hard to keep your spirit up when you're playing this build. It is really hard to keep everything going. There's not a lot of plates to spend, but the plates you do have to spend are very, very, very hard to keep spinning. All right, last but absolutely not least is the Rend Barbarian, who requires 0 aspects. This is the easiest build to get started. It is very effective, it is very strong, it is very tanky, it is very everything you need it to be to level up. The two options you have with Barbarian are Rend and Hoda. Hoda is great, Rend is greater. They're both really strong, they're about the same tier, but Rend is just better overall. The synergies without having to have any of the extra stuff is just better, right? All right, so as you can see, it doesn't have anything as far as aspects go. There are some aspects that are useful, and we'll go over that when I do the Barbarian specific video. But for the most part, you don't need anything. When I first got my Barbarian to 50, I literally just made sure I had a bunch of yellows and was rolling through. There's really nothing you have to do other than smack the mobs with Rend. Smack the mobs with Leaping Strike to get your stuff up, and then Death Blow to kill low enemies and to keep your Fury up. Like, that's literally all you got to do. Obviously, you've got a couple of shouts to keep up. You've got Call of the Ancients to help you delete big packs and to delete elites. But other than that, this one's really straightforward. It's really easy. It's big bonks, big bleeds, big runaway. Super easy, barely an inconvenience. It's really easy to play. It's really easy to understand. It's really easy to just blaze through the game with this. The only downside to this is even with having the altars and stuff, there will be a point at which you have to turn the game down unless you've gotten really lucky with drops, because everything literally scales off of your weapon damage. So if your weapons aren't dropping frequently, then it makes it a little harder. Something else that's really good about this is you get the purple gems, which give you damage over time, and you can put 6 of them in your gear. So you just get a flat 30% increased damage increase just for existing because you have 4 weapons. All right, so let's talk about the pros and cons of this build for a little bit. Satisfying bleeds. The bleeds do feel good. You'll hit the mob a couple of times, you'll put a bleed on it, you'll walk away, it'll die. Powerful in group play. That is also very true because you're debuffing enemies, you're making them bleed, you're keeping them slowed. You were basically a one-man army with Rend. The only thing is it's kind of hard to aim it, and it's in melee range, right? High single target damage, also true. If you dump a full Fury Bar on an elite, chances are it's going to bleed to death. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Good damage without aspects. I've already gone over that a little bit. You don't really need any aspects to make this build work properly. Some of the cons, weak area clear. Absolutely true. You have to hit each mob with a Rend. It's only a cleave in front of you. It's really hard to get positioned to hit all of the mobs. It does take a little bit to get rolling, and it does take a while to kill the mobs sometimes because you have to position yourself in a manner where you can hit them all. Limited range on Rend, like I was just saying. It's not very big. It's a very small area in front of you. It's really easy to play, but it puts you in a position where sometimes it's a little tougher to deal with. Requires gathering monsters. That is also true. You will be using Leaping Strike, Lunging Strike to hop around and hit different monsters and get them stacked up, because that's like the best way to hit as many as you can. And then you're gonna like dodge to one side and then hit with a Rend, and then you're gonna hit as many as you can, walk around the pack, hit the other side. Positioning. It's really different. Low help from Codex of Power, like we were just saying. There's not a whole lot you need from the Codex that can make this better. I mean, obviously you're going to want to put the defensives on here because it's just going to make you super tanky. But other than that, there's nothing you actually need. So there's nothing that actually helps you out a whole lot. But anyway, I think I'm going to go ahead and call that here and start working on the individual videos. I don't know what order in which I'm going to bring them out yet. I do know that one day is going to have 2 videos, and then the other days are going to have 1 each as far as these guides go. I'm going to try to release this on Sunday. Other than that, guys, I will see you guys in the next one, and I hope to see you in Sanctuary.